Hello, my name is Eric Crone, Commercial Real Estate Advisor here at Rising Real Estate Services, and I wanted to make another video about 1031 exchanges and what ways you could use your money and what ways you can't use your money with the exchange. And I wanted to first start just with a review of what a 1031 exchange is, if you haven't watched my last video. So what a 1031 exchange is a way for investors to use their money from a property that they just sold, a real estate investment, and they could put it into a holding place where they have a certain amount of time before they could use that money again. But the thing is that the taxes of the capital gains or losses will be deferred. So it's a way for people to go around paying taxes in order to put their money into a new investment from an investment or real estate property that they just sold. In that last video, we discussed that there are certain rules and regulations about using a 1031 exchange, and I briefly mentioned that you have to use it for like-kind property, but I didn't go too much in depth on what that means. So that's what I wanted to make this video about today. I want to go over the definition that is provided legally, and that is any productive use of a business, trade, or investment could be used for like-kind property. But I want to go a little bit more about what that really means. So you could really exchange any type of properties as long as they're used for investment use. And I'll give you an example. You could exchange a multifamily property for a multifamily property, and that's a given, right? But we could also exchange a multifamily property for a land investment. Or you could exchange a single family investment property that you held for a multifamily, or an office for an industrial, or etc. You could really do any type of property as long as it's held for productive use as an investment. That would be considered like-kind property. Another cool thing to note about 1031 exchanges is it doesn't only apply for real estate property. You could also apply money in a 1031 exchange to purchase a business. So let's say you're buying a retail space that offers a family-owned business and they're looking just to sell it as well. You could use your money from the 1031 exchange to buy the retail property and use that money to buy the business. Or you could just use all that money to buy a business if that's what you want to do, because that would be productive use as a business for investment purposes. One more thing I want to note is that 1031 exchange money could also be used for closing costs or other costs associated with purchasing a property or purchasing a business or a trade. Now, there are a lot of rules and it gets a little bit more gray when it comes to closing costs and different types of costs, and I'll try to explain that a little more on the section on what you can't use your money in a 1031 exchange for. But you can, for the most part, use 1031 exchange money for closing costs associated with the purchase of a business, trade, or a like-kind use property. But obviously you should consult with a tax advisor to know the specific rules, and every investment is different. And so it's very important that you do that in order to know what you really could use your money for or you can't. The rules about what you can use your money for in a 1031 exchange are pretty broad. So I think it's better to look at what you really can't use your money for in a 1031 exchange. And so that's what I'm going to go over right now. Firstly, I want to go over the obvious ones, and that is you can't use your 1031 exchange money for personal property. You can't use it to buy a vacation house for yourself. You can't use it to buy a personal house for yourself, a primary residence. You can't use it for personal property. You also cannot use 1031 exchange money for anything that is considered stock for trade. It has to be investment only. That means you can't buy anything that you're looking to flip. You can't buy fix and flips with 1031 exchange money, because that would be considered stock for trade. You're buying that building only to fix it and flip it and sell it. That's not investment grade, right? So investment properties are properties you're looking to keep and hold. Now, there's no specific time frame that I could find in terms of what is considered investment. Can you hold it for a year, 2 years, and that qualifies? Maybe. But that is kind of in the weeds. It's kind of gray area. But what I know for sure is you can't buy it with the intentions of selling it. You have to buy it with the intentions of holding it for the near future. Another thing to note about this rule is that if you're buying a business, you can't purchase their stock, because that would be stock for trade, because that's inventory that they're looking to sell. So you can't buy a business with their inventory. You can, but you can't use 1031 exchange money for that, because the inventory is inventory that you're going to buy the business and immediately sell it, right? Because that's inventory. If you buy the business, the inventory is going to sell, right? So you can't use your 1031 exchange money for the inventory at that business because that is considered stock for trade. The rules are kind of gray in terms of what items you could purchase in a business. I found a source that mentioned that you can't buy equipment that is used for the business and vehicles and things along those lines. But to get into those details, every transaction is different. So that is why it's very important to talk to a professional to know the specifics of what you can use your 1031 exchange money for and what you can't. Another thing you can't use your 1031 exchange money for is for bonds, stocks, or personal shares in a company. That's because that is also considered stock for trade. Because they're public shares, public stock, that's something that it could be traded very easily, and that's not something that is considered under 1031 rules to be investment purposes. That's considered stock for trade. You cannot also use your money in notes, partnership shares, trusts, or REITs. So you might be thinking, oh, well, I can invest my money in a REIT. That's real estate. It's a real estate investment trust. But that's not the case because it's considered stock for trade because it is like buying a share of a stock. A REIT is the same as investing in any other trust. So, but there's ways around it, like the Delaware Statutory Trust, where you might be able to use your 1031 investment money for, but as a general rule, trusts and REITs are not allowed to use your 1031 money for. Foreign property is not included as something you could use your 1031 money for. It has to be a property, a business, a trade that is located in the United States. Another thing to note is that repair costs, application fees, those things are also not included in your 1031 exchange money that you could use it for. You cannot use it for renovation costs generally, but that's something you also should consult about and see if there's any way you could use it for. But as a general rule, repair costs are not allowed for you to use that money for. In conclusion, the rules are pretty lax in terms of what like-kind property is. As long as it's for productive use for an investment, business, or trade, you could use that 1031 exchange money for that purpose. Now, in terms of investments and property, you could exchange really any type of investment property for another type of investment property, but you cannot use it for property that you're looking to sell or flip. And you could also not use it for bonds, stocks, trusts, generally, because that's considered stock for trade. Additionally, if you're buying a business, the 1031 exchange money cannot be used for inventory purchases because that's also considered stock for trade. Hopefully you learned something in this video. If you have any questions, you can leave them down below. Also, my contact information will be listed at the end of this video as well as the description below. And thank you so much for watching.